this Saturday, the place to be is Dalby for Words Out West. If you're a book lover, or if you just love a ripping good story, or if you just love finding out a little bit more about the process of writing books, if maybe you feel you've got a potential book within you, it's been sitting down there in the bottom drawer for God knows how long, not letting anyone see it, but you reckon that, there might be something in it. How do I take it to the next level? Well, all of those topics are up for discussion. It's going to be a fascinating Saturday down in Dalby at the Events Centre. A host of fantastic speakers. If you want more details, check out the Words Out West 2023 website. One of them is hosted by my next guest, Claudine Tinellis. Now, Claudine, in a previous life, shall we say, was a corporate lawyer. But she gave all that away to pursue her love of books. She's a writer, she's a presenter, and she's a podcaster.
Hello and welcome to Talking Aussie Books, a weekly podcast bringing readers and writers of Australian fiction together. I'm Claudine Tinellis. Grab yourself a cuppa, sit back and relax.
Claudine Tinellis, good morning and welcome.
Oh, good morning, David. It's lovely to be here with you today.
I've grabbed my cup of coffee and I'm sitting back and relaxed.
That's awesome.
I am ready. Now, tell me, I'm curious. I love, I always love hearing people's stories about midlife, or maybe it was an earlier in life, or I don't know, but a career change, from something quite sort of formal to something a little bit more relaxed. Tell me how you went from being a corporate lawyer to an author and turned your love of books into a profession, because that's a pretty sharp contrast there, isn't it?
It is, actually. But, I mean, look, it wasn't really a stretch for me because I'd always loved books. I think as a kid I'd always had my nose in a book, and obviously that kind of love of reading translated into a career in the law, which obviously one has to read quite a bit to be a lawyer. And so, yeah, that was a natural kind of progression for me. But then pretty much, I did about 10 or 11 years as a corporate lawyer, and I had 3 children in the space of, 10 years. And it got to the stage where my family life and my responsibilities as a mother wasn't exactly compatible with being a corporate lawyer. Even though the firm that I worked for was, quite family friendly, I was working part-time, and, there was just a succession of events that kind of made it a bit difficult for me to continue. So I thought that I'd take a break and just focus on caring for my children. But I think I'm the kind of person that just can't sit still for very long. And so I was looking for creative outlets all the time, and did different things before I decided that maybe I should just dust off that manuscript that was sitting in the bottom of my bottom drawer of my desk, and thought maybe I should just pursue my passion for writing. And as a lawyer, I'd always put my hand up for the tasks that involved, writing articles or researching articles, and I just seem to have a love of, seeing my name in print. That's probably a little bit embarrassing to admit.
That's what it comes down to, is it? Okay. a little bit self-absorbed. No, only kidding.
No, so then that's when I decided that I would actually try and make a go of writing a novel. And interestingly, an opportunity came my way to write a non-fiction book, and that was in the form of Coastal Chef's Culinary Art of Seaweed and Algae in the 21st Century. And that was essentially just a serendipitous kind of set of circumstances where, it was the brainchild of Dr. Pia Winberg, who is a seaweed farmer who lives down on the south coast, and whom I happened to be friends with because we went to school together, and we both had a mutual friend in a publisher down in Ulladulla, and he was very keen to come on board to produce something for Dr. Winberg. And interestingly, in 2014, she was responsible for convening the 5th Congress of the International Congress of Psychologists, who were all descending on Sydney in June of 2018, and she decided that she would like to put together some kind of book for the delegates who were coming along, and she wanted to essentially highlight the benefits of seaweed as an everyday food. And so both Pia and Gary Evans, who sadly has passed away now, but both of them decided that I would be the person to bring that project to fruition. And so began my love affair with publishing, and I decided that after the publication of that book, I really decided I wanted to put my back into getting my novel published.
Fantastic, but that was like a almost sort of fortuitous, like the planets aligned to make that happen. Because I would imagine, for a start, even though you'd written and researched, important stuff in your legal career, this was a book that you could throw your talents into that you knew was going to be published. And I would imagine also, was it good for just having runs on the board? I mean, non-fiction as opposed to fiction, but at least you've got something out there, so you've got something to hang your hat on, I suppose.
Absolutely, and it was an excellent introduction into the publishing industry. I got to understand how things worked, and I got to make some excellent contacts in the publishing industry, and it really just fueled my love for the entire process. After that, I just knew this is the space that I wanted to be in, and I no longer sort of thought that I would go back to the law after that. And, then I'd always been a lover of books and always loved reading books and always loved talking to people about books. And so the podcast wasn't really a stretch in that respect. But, honestly, people always ask me how I started podcasting, and I always tell them that it was the most impulsive thing that I've ever done.
Really? So tell me how instant was that decision and what brought it on?
Yeah, so it was literally a walk in the park, and I decided that, yes, this was what I was going to do. Because essentially, I started listening to podcasts because I wanted to understand what the common Australian path to publication was in the fiction sphere, obviously. I wanted to hear from Australian authors how they went from aspiring to published authors, what challenges they faced, if any, what their experiences with rejection were, that sort of thing. And look, whilst there were many quality bookish podcasts around, nothing out there focused exclusively on Australian fiction. And given that this was the space that I wanted to be in, I decided to strike out on my own and see if I could start a niche podcast for people like me who just wanted to understand the Australian publishing experience better. So that's how it started.
What's it like, though, to start it up? Great idea, and you've found a niche in the market, which anyone in the know would advise you to do. But you're still, I guess, in the podcast world and to the sort of writers that you were targeting and that you've ended up having access to talk to as part of this podcast now that it's taken off. At first, was it hard to get them to come onto your show when they're sort of saying, well, who are you and why is this worthy of my time? Was it a challenge, or are they just generally, hey, I'm a writer, I spend 23 hours a day by myself, I'll talk to anybody?
Yeah, look, that's a fabulous question. At first, I thought I was going to have a lot of difficulty getting people to come on board and talk to me. But the Australian writing community is something incredibly special. And all I did was put it out there to a few people that I knew, people that I had, personal dealings with, and said, hey, look, this is something that I've decided to do. Would you be interested in talking to me? I don't know who's going to listen to me. I have no idea whether, it's going to take off or not, but would you be interested? And without exception, David, I have to tell you that everybody said, absolutely, for sure, no problem, and it was an hour of their time, and I tried my best to be very professional about it and did a good job editing, so everybody sounded really terrific, and I think it just went from there. People really enjoyed that experience, and I actually found that I really enjoyed talking to people and uncovering, their inspirations and their challenges, and I just found that I was good at doing it, and people really enjoyed the kinds of questions that I asked. And so it just went from strength to strength, much to my surprise.
That is brilliant, because now it's sort of, I guess, in addition to the other things that you do, it's not a bad way to keep your profile up, not a bad way to, in inverted commas, earn a living, really. It all adds to your brand and the way you earn an income, but it's not a bad addition to that, really, doing something that you love, talking about things that you love, and expanding your knowledge on the industry with every episode, I would imagine, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, for the longest time, it wasn't a paid enterprise for me. It was just something I did out of pure passion and love. And, in that spirit, people, were very happy to come on board and talk to me. And then it kind of just it got a little bit bigger than me. People just started sending me books. I get contacted by, indie authors, people who are having trouble, getting their book noticed, people who just want a bit of a boost to their book and visibility. So I get contacted all the time, and I'm, very delighted and chuffed to be thought of as the kind of person who would be able to help them shine a light on their work.
But do you have to be discerning? That's actually an interesting situation, because obviously I get the impression, talking to you and listening to some of the episodes, that you love talking about books. Obviously, you would talk to anyone who's written a book because that's interesting. But in the interests of, I don't know, it sounds really callous to say this, but quality control, do you have to say, well, look, I can't really talk to you on my podcast unless you're already published, or I can't talk to you unless you've sold, X number of copies? I don't know. Do you have to sort of set a threshold for your listeners, or are you happy to talk to unpublished authors as well?
I think what I have done is that I've said, for my own interest, certainly in the beginning, I will only talk to published authors. But
Yep.
that crosses, that covers a spectrum. It could be, independently published authors. It could be traditionally published authors. I didn't discriminate in that regard. Although, yes, I agree with you in the interests of quality control. I guess I have to have some kind of minimum threshold of, people who at least had a crack at trying to, get their books out there and try and grow their own profile, because I've certainly been approached by people who don't have much of a following, whose book is self-published and it's not readily available on shelves, or they don't have much of a profile. And so I've always sort of tried to go back to them kindly as possible and say, look, I can't do all the heavy lifting. You probably need to spend a bit more time and effort connecting with fans or readers or
Sure.
other people in the industry, and try and grow your profile a little bit before I can spotlight your book or your career. Because, sometimes it can go nowhere. Like, just because I've talked to somebody on the podcast doesn't mean it's necessarily going to sell anything.
No. But the opposite is true, that it could actually detract from, listeners might tune in to that episode and think, well, I've never heard of that book, I don't know where I can get hold of it, and that might detract from the product that you're offering, I guess. So, yeah.
Absolutely, that is exactly the case. And I think that, I think people are so savvy now, particularly sophisticated in terms of, looking people up online, understanding what their profile is. And so if they look somebody up online and they've got, a handful of Instagram followers, and there's nowhere easily that they can order their book, or nobody's reviewed that book, they're very likely not to want to pursue it.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely understandable. But the 200 episodes, or the 200 writers and authors that you have spoken to, make for very compelling listening. I'm out of time to even ask you a little bit more about the panel that you're hosting at 2:30 on Saturday afternoon, Fatal Fiction. But rest assured that people can meet you and attend that session at Words Out West this weekend in Dalby. Looking forward to meeting you.
Looking forward to meeting you and all the listeners out there who get the chance to go to Dalby. That'll be wonderful.
Indeed. Hey, safe travel up to our part of the world. Claudine, lovely to have a chat to you this morning.
Lovely to speak with you, David. Thanks so much.